Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745, and yes, even though we're looking at Spain, we're actually playing the Soviet Union. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and you can follow me over on Twitch if you like. And of course, you can hit that like button. We're going to continue trying to somehow save the Spanish Republic, but that's looking more and more futile. That revolt up here really sort of killed us. I think that makes it too easy for Spain to win, or for the nationalists to win. So I got 6 divisions, and they're not like wondrous divisions or anything, but they're 3 armored. And... okay, more military factories. Okay, well, let's put some tactical bombers in production. Don't we have some? They're just strategic bombers. Probably don't. Well, we'll leave one factory doing that just to have some. The dreaded PE-8 interwar bomber. Feared by war thunder tankers everywhere. Oh, what would that be, Mateus? No, 3 daughters. Yeah, that kind of stuff. That could keep him in line. Yeah, he's definitely a catalyst to the whole thing. I won't dispute that. AZADs. I just... Leadership is an interesting thing. In, say, the Neapolitan army of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, however you want to say this down here, it's sort of the late 18th century and Napoleonic century. Or it wasn't century, but the Napoleonic period. You could easily, readily have a situation where you have a captain of a company, you know, the commander of a company. He knows that he's with the, say, 5th Regiment or whatever. And he knows that the 5th Regiment is the one with the, say, white coats, because they all have white coats, let's say. I don't really know what the Kingdom of Two Sicilies is, but uniform right offhand. But they're the ones with the green facings, meaning like the lapels and the cuffs are green. Okay, so he can recognize the 5th Regiment. But it can be quite possible that he could walk out to the 5th Regiment, start walking along it, and couldn't recognize which company was his. And the soldiers in his company couldn't, do anything to like say, it's us over here, because they wouldn't recognize their own captain. That is how bad the leadership was in the Bourbon army of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. And they actually were able to lose every single battle they ever fought, I think. Mainly because as the enemy starts approaching the battlefield, all the officers get on their horses and ride away. Because, hell, they ain't going to be captured or killed. They're riding away. And so the troops are looking around, and there goes their officers. They don't have a tendency to keep fighting after that point. So they all fall apart. Okay, so it's pretty bad. Jump over to the English army. A captain. I'm not talking like some colonel or high-level guy, but some captain. He takes care of his troops. His troops are what is his job. He makes sure that they have food. He makes sure they have shoes. And that, and shoes that don't, that function well. He makes sure of all of these things. He not that A company, I don't know, 80 men. Not that he knows everybody's name. I mean, he knows who the sergeants are. And so he might, definitely like start walking along and see, if they're all lined, see the sergeants. He probably know, obviously he has a Batman, which is like from bateau or whatever. It's corruption, I think, of French, but which is sort of a soldier servant. And sure, he knows a few other of the soldiers, by name and face and whatnot would be quite common. A few of them out of the company. The two lieutenants in the company, because they're organized different. There's normally one captain and two lieutenants in an 18th century company. And for Britain, at least, I don't know. Each nation sort of does things differently to some degree, and it depends on when in the 18th century and whatnot. But so he looks out after his troops. Now he's not like they're not coming and crying on his shoulder because their girlfriend or wife left them or anything like that. But he makes sure they all have a musket, they all have ammo, they all have food. You know, they're basically functional. Now the soldier in the 18th century, and it's a strange thing, and it lingers to this day. But they want their officers to be a gentleman, to be something that's respectable, not in the middle class sort of respectable way, but as something of the quality. And I'm sort of trying to use language that they would have used. And he didn't need to be thought to be a military genius because, for a captain, all you're doing is lining up your companies in a battalion and marching around in, big long lines. It wasn't like, yeah, our captain, he's going to lead us really super well in battle. No, he's just going to sort of walk behind us as we march at the enemy because, the captain's walking behind the company. And he has his sergeants, especially in the late part of the 18th century, they're carrying halberds, or basically sort of fancy spears that have you can stab somebody sort of kind of with them, but they may all be sort of dull metal things on the end of them, sort of. That they're mostly just sort of almost to whack their own troops to keep them in line, keep them, including in battle. Don't flinch, so you go thunk somebody on the butt or on the back, not like really hard, but enough to get them their attention. Sorry, I'm not paying attention to the chat for the moment. I'll get to you guys in a moment. And so that's sort of the sergeants. The sergeants are brutal with the troops. The officers should never touch in any sort of physical way soldiers, other than maybe once they've panicked and you're trying to get them to stop from running away. So you grab Private Evans or something to get them to stop running. Stand in line, maybe in those sort of extreme kind of measures. But the normal discipline kind of way, officers will never touch a soldier. The sergeants may beat the crap out of a soldier who isn't behaving, but the officers are never going to touch a soldier. Again, like I say, they're storming some breach and they're, hoping the privates get over the wall. Of course, they're, helping push them over the wall, or they, privates starting to run away when the cavalry are coming. Nope, stay in line and, jerk them back or something. At sort of extreme moments, yes, but in normal daily life, they're not going to do any sort of the stuff, but they're, hey, okay. But they're going to, let the sergeants be sort of the brutal enforcers within the company. And so there's a strange sort of respect and want and a dislike, an active dislike, especially in the latter half of the 18th century, of soldiers up from the ranks becoming an officer. They're disliked. Now in Britain, there's this sort of gentleman soldier volunteer. And they weren't real privates because they were volunteers. They weren't paid. And basically they sort of lined up with the soldiers and fought with the soldiers when the fighting was happening, and otherwise sort of kind of messed with the officers because they were just basically waiting for an officer to die and then try to get promoted into the from battle, get a battlefield promotion, because they didn't have the money to buy to buy a commission, because commissions in most 18th century armies were bought for money. So they might be of the gentlemanly class, but they were definitely of the sort of upper merchant class. Something that would sort of be a gentleman, but not like an aristocratic or even a gentleman farmer, but somebody with some education, somebody of some quality, shall we say? That would line up with the soldiers and know the military drill of arms and be just one of the rest of the soldiers for combat or other sort of duties, but kind of sort of mess with the officers, sort of like an officer in waiting, but they got to sort of wait for a battlefield promotion and step into dead man's shoes. So there is some of that kind of stuff, but they really despise the up from the. You find some of this, some of the site do get from Sharp, but Sharp is an exaggerated case if you know the series, either the books or the movies. But so yeah, this gets roundabout to and I don't know the Russian army of the czars, but I believe some of this to be the case because I find this to be some of the case with the French and the Germans and other armies. And I use the extreme example of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, the Bourbons, that how bad the leadership was. It was just really sort of a paid social thing to become an officer, and most of the officers did not know their duties. I mean, anything, their duties. They relied upon their sergeants to do any sort of thing to really command the troops. It really sucked. That's sort of the two extremes that I come up with. Britain is sort of on one extreme. The Neapolitan, the army, is the other extreme. I think the Tsarist army is, not on the extreme, but more on the Neapolitan side of things. And so you have to lose a lot of confidence in your officers to want to revolt against them. And we're talking your company officers. We're not talking higher up. And they revolt against them. And I don't think it was primarily because of the charisma of Lenin coming back in there. I really think it was the corrosiveness of the war and the utter failure of the Tsarist system to feed, clothe, which includes the shoes, and arm, which also includes ammo, their soldiers well enough. And it wasn't just them losing battles, because we can see this same system function quite reasonably well. Now, I don't know the, shall we say, social distancing, to use sort of a current term, but it is the sort of the term, and made up between the officer class and the enlisted class in the 1814 to 1914. I don't know if it's closer or further, because I know in say 1730, 1740, your sort of captain and lieutenant social distancing is much closer to the soldier compared to 1780, 1790. It's much, in the British Army, it's much further apart. The gentlemanly class moves further apart, and jump to the 1840s, 1850s, it's gotten further apart. It's it's more and more divorced from the troops. And it's only the latter part of the 19th century that it's starting to get back to a closer social connection between them and the British Army. So there's that sort of curve. And so we don't see a collapse of the Tsarist armies because Napoleon's winning battles. Because I believe the Tsarist armies fighting Napoleon are effectively equipping their troops, and are effectively, even though losing battles, are effectively managing the situation. Now, it doesn't go on as long. That's part of it, because it's the attrition of World War One and its inability to win, and it, for most Russians, fighting in this part, and this was Russia at the time, it's not really Russia. It's not Moscow. It's not St. Petersburg. It's not, and I know we have a Russian viewer in here, and I'll look at the chat and read what you're saying. It's not the sort of heartland of Russia. It's sort of fighting on the edges of Russia. So they're not defending their homes, as it were, when they were fighting the Germans in World War One. And there was no, yeah, just one more battle and we've won. We're almost in Berlin kind of thing. So there's a lot of that going on, and so you have to get to a pretty bad place where you have the revolts against the officers. So that's just sort of my analysis, and I hope that was interesting for everybody both watching in there. Let me scroll up the chat to see. Yeah, I have a challenge. Okay. Restrict a bit better. Yeah, we're going to see about doing something. The Nazis used drugs on their troops in World War II. Did the Russians do the same? No, I've not heard about that. We've had the personality at the time and don't have it enough now. U.S.S.R soldiers got an order and he tries to do it. If not, I mean, different ideology between allies. Yes, very different ideology. We don't have any. Yeah, I didn't think the Soviets used drugs like the Pregavin or whatever, how you pronounce it, the Germans, the speed, as it were. Interesting, I pulled this from the Zukov Wikipedia. The Major General Francis, our Chief of Staff of the Field Marshal Montgomery, describes Zukov as a friendly person. John Gunther many times said that Zukov was more friendly and honest than any of the other Soviet leaders. Very well could. Russia used vodka? Okay, that's... Yeah, vodka is a thing. Yeah, I can see that, keeping infections from a stomach wound being a real thing. That's part of the stomach wounds problem is infections. Yep, rum. Now that was often grog, and in that it was mixed with a fair amount of water, the rum ration. So certainly they kept them in a general state of inebriation, but I'm butchering that word. But they weren't seriously drunk most of the time. That wasn't a quite that much, and it was most of the time. I'm not talking shore leave and other times, but most of the daily situation was just sort of I think a slight buzz or a slight bit of inebriation going on, but not a heavy levels of it. Well, I don't think we're gonna win this here. Okay, the allies are ganging up against us. I don't know whether I just came into this too late or the revolt of these guys just killed us too much. We're getting low on convoys. 32. Oh, well, let's go down to where I gotta go all the way down. Oh, no, not to infinity. Let's just go down to these. Okay, I thought these were at 1, and I just didn't pay enough attention. So I'm not used to playing the Soviets. Once we get through this situation here, then I will see about building some more convoys. I don't know. I just don't know the Russian situation well in World War I or II or whatever. I mean, I know bits and pieces, but there was a lot of, with the Russian upper classes, there's a lot of patriotism there. There's also, I believe, a lot of arrogance there. And I don't know how that all sort of shook out. Oh, because Valencias are unguarded. Now it's guarded, but was our unguarded capital. Let's see if we can at least get a buffer around our capital while we try to kill these guys out down here. And yes, they're pushing. Oh god. Leave this area now. They're pushing in there. Indian National Congress triumphs in provincial elections. Italy announces claims on Yugoslav territory. I don't really know which one would be strategic destruction, which would be historical. Operational tactical bombers flexible. Don't know which one's good to go for Russia. That's the German line. Yeah, we'll see about going with this one. Low echelon support, disperse fighting. Yeah, we'll do that. Well, you stay. One stays, one goes. And you rush to there. We just don't have as many slots as the Germans will have, so we want to focus on... Yeah, we could do that so we can have KV-1s later. Okay, good. Now, let's... These guys going over to here. Ocean going Navy. People's Commissariat of Defense Industry, which grants civilian military factory conversion. I'm not really that worried about that at the moment. Improve the Stalin line, that would be good, yeah. So let's push down through that. See, the Portuguese have joined in this along with the Italians and the Germans. Okay. You can loop around and hit them in the flank. Okay, they've fallen back here. You come up back in the line. Hit them in the flank. Yeah, let's start building some medium tanks. There's some ships sent to reinforce the 2nd Pacific Squadron during were yachts of, yes, aristocrats that... Yeah, no, the aristocrats... Okay, I'm about ready to make some very bold, sweeping statements that I'm sure are untrue. I'm sure are untrue in some individual cases and not always true. But aristocrats, at least in the West, come about as sort of an international class. They are not necessarily tied to a specific ethnic group, whatever ethnic group they may be. And if you've watched a lot of the, especially including like not the very first, but one of the original and still the best Robin Hood movie starring Errol Flynn, you have Richard the Lionheart, Richard de la Cour. Note that I did say Richard de la Cour. I'm sure I'm butchering that, but you know, coming as sort of this English hero. Well, Richard, not that he despised Englishmen. I don't think he cared about Englishmen at all. Despised England. He did not like England, to the best of my knowledge. He liked France. But he spent very, very little time. He was mostly an absentee king, which may be sort of why the English like him, because other than his one sort of, when he was sort of locked up in Germany, his brother John is on the throne, and that didn't go well for England. But other than that, I think he normally, you know, he ruled through appointments and whatnot. And so I guess they went pretty well. So the English have a soft spot in their heart for Richard. But Richard spends most of his time on the continent over here, battling others for control of France. So the Plantagenet monarchy does, over time, post-Richard, you know, develop a bit more of an English sensibility. But Richard is not an Englishman. He's a, you know, a Norman. And if you ever want to see a great movie about Richard, The Lion in Winter, which is focused more on his father, he's the eldest of the sons. And King John comes off very, very poorly in that movie. But a really good movie, Lion in Winter. Wonderful movie. And so a lot of these nobles, you know, are not really tied to specific cultures and specific groups. But that does change over time, but still you find Russian nobles, basically all of the significant nobles, all speak French. They also speak Russian too. And there are definitely, and I forget the one of the czars right around the time. He's a Francophile, and there's several of them have been Francophiles, but also somewhat of a Napoleonic file, Napoleon file, or whatever you want to say. But that doesn't mean they're not pro-Russia. And you also find a similar thing with the German Habsburg nobility. They mostly don't speak German amongst themselves. They speak French amongst themselves. And it is described in one thing that I read. They would speak French to each other and German to their servants. So German was sort of the low class. The Habsburgs, in particular, the aristocracy, the royal family, if you will, were very much internationalists. And so you very well, and I, very well, get in the 18th century German aristocrats ruling over Hungary, or German aristocrats ruling over maybe a bit earlier, but you know, over the Netherlands, and definitely a lot of German aristocrats ruling over Italy. So they're sort of an internationalist group. Well, Russia isn't quite like that extreme, but they're definitely sort of this educated, wannabe European elites coming, this is by the Napoleonic Wars there. So, yeah, they're a bit divorced from what's going on. And so, like you mentioned, sending their, and I think it's Drakchinifel, or however you pronounce his name, a lot of good stuff, had a really good two-parter on the Russian fleet making it over to get sunk in the Tsushima Straits. But that was a remarkable voyage. And yeah, there is a lot of patriotism there, like to want to donate their sort of significant yachts that are, small ships, to this cause as, liaison vessels, not like battleships, but as in, a warship, but not as a frontline fighting type ship, more of a scouting warship or something. And so you get a lot of that going on, and there is a disconnect there, as you can sort of kind of tell, in that they want to see themselves as Europeans and not as the Russian peasants. And that continues to sort of separate, and is part of the reason why you get the Russian Revolution. Not the only reasons. And Lenin is a factor, Lenin is a face to it all. But I would put, as the reason for the revolution to happen, particularly the Menshevik revolution sort of at first, he's a minor factor. A serious factor, but a minor one of them. Right to do so. The dreaded T-32. Yeah, I think you're thinking of the T-34, but yeah. Hello, Mark. How you doing? Kings and queens. And we peasants, land, nothing has changed. It's still the same. Well, largely so. What are we doing? What did I click on? I don't know. Doesn't matter. We're losing. Let's go back to the line. Yes, our current. Yeah, I know it's our current medium tank. But I really don't know what a T-32 is. I'm missing. Is there something in War Thunder there that I'm missing? Probably. I don't know. Well, we're now becoming the Valencia garrison here. I do like that Black Eyes put some super forts to Madrid, because Madrid was significantly fortified by the defenders of Madrid, so that does have a certain realistic ring to it. Well, let's head that way. It's a medium, yeah, I understand. See, something I don't think that was in serious production. Now, again, I may be wrong, but there's a bunch of things I can talk with authority on. Not on all this stuff. I'm just sort of going, okay, we want to increase the number of anti-tank guns. We haven't even put any in a division yet, I know, but I want to get a stockpile of them up. Oh, we need more rubber, do we? Well, let's move these bombers down below so that they have the rubber shortage and not our interwar bombers, which I really would rather have more of. Okay, now I've heard of the T-50. Thank you, Max. I've definitely heard of the T-50. But they didn't make a lot of T-50s. They made some. Now, of course, I've heard of the T-34. Now, of course, there's problems with aristocracies, but there's good things with aristocracies. And aristocracies, I think, are necessary. Well, no, are not necessary, but are, let's research that, are beneficial when you have an uneducated populace. Now, most developed nations, shall we say, have an educated populace, so they don't need aristocracies. They don't need them, and maybe not that they, theoretically exist. That's fine, that there's people with titles, and even if the government recognizes it. But I mean aristocrats, as in ruling class, actually ruling aristocrats. Maybe more of a detriment than good. But they're not all bad here. Times Their Own got a bit worried that there would be a semi-permanent clique of the royal family aristocrats who spent all their time living it up in Paris. I can imagine that. Now, you see, this is the problem between British aristocrats and Russian aristocrats. And I know that this goes, and there's other aristocrats that are somewhere in between the two. In Britain, now it's changed more, or some in the modern day a bit, but traditionally is, we're talking true aristocrats here, people with titles. You had someone had a title or multiple titles, quite possibly, but you had a title and that was it. And traditionally, because this is why I say it's changed a bit, modern times, not all titles are passed on to their children. They're just to the one person. But traditionally, it would be passed on, and it would be to the eldest male. There are exceptions to females, and other members of the family may get courtesy handed off title. A sort of somewhat of a famous one is the Prince of Wales, is sort of the King of England is sort of the Prince of Wales, shall we say, because Wales is a principality, but he gives it as a courtesy title, shall we say, to the eldest son. And I'm slightly messing that up, but that's just easily to explain it. There's other cases. So there's other cases where you have somebody who's a duke, but may also have one or two other titles and will traditionally give one to the eldest son. But that's just temporary while he's the eldest son. If he lives long enough, he'll inherit all the titles. If he doesn't live long enough, his father lives longer. In centuries past, people died from all kinds of things, so he very well may, including dying, the son may go off and die in war or something. If he doesn't live long enough, he doesn't necessarily pass on his titles to his children because they really belong to his father. And so, but if his father has, say, 3 male children, only the eldest one is going to inherit all the titles at the time of death, the eldest one, at the time of death. Where in the Russian system, an archduke who has 3 male children, all 3 of those children become archdukes. So that you have this aristocratic situation where you're constantly expanding the aristocratic class. You don't have, because you start to create, I don't know if incestuous is the right term, but you start to create this group of people intermixing amongst themselves that get divorced from the rest of society, and they don't necessarily have relatives that aren't aristocrat, because they don't always necessarily, an archduke doesn't always necessarily marry an archduchess or something. You know, people may marry up and down a little bit on the social scales, but they're all going to marry elites. So in the English situation, someone may just have one title. The other sons they get the sort of term honorable attached to the first generation, but it's just sort of the honorable whatever, their last name. It's sort of an honorary type title, if you will. It's more than that, but not so much. But they're not, classic landed aristocrats necessarily, because they're not necessarily going to inherit any land. They're not going to get anything out of it. So you have family members, and of course their children are another, what would be the grandchildren of the aristocrat are now basically, commoners in the sense. Now these aren't commoners. These are probably well-educated. They go get good jobs, good professions, maybe working on the great estates, of their families or whatever. And so they might marry up, but they also might marry down or marry to their sort of level a bit. So you get this sort of social interaction much more in Britain, and sort of the two extremes we're looking at here. And so this is sort of the problem. And if Britain, as its empire expands, it needs elites to run it. And so it is going to some degree, over time, expand its ennobled class. But also, it's going to elevate commoners that don't get ennobled and, become prime minister. Because you're not going to find the equivalents of a prime minister in Russia who isn't a noble. He's going to be a noble. And they're not necessarily, prime ministers aren't necessarily like people that win elections in parliaments. They're just the main minister, and they're all appointed by the Tsar or whatever. But you're not going to find one. Now, you look at the right times, you may get people that come not from the elite. I mean, they're from the upper levels of society, but they're not all aristocrats. I'm thinking of some of the favorites of Catherine the Great or something that come out of some of the Guards regiments. So they're pretty elite already, the Guards regiments. The officers of the Guards regiments are, not common people, but they may not actually have an aristocratic title. They get elevated, but they get elevated into this aristocratic class given the titles. So you have this sort of problem. So that's sort of the extreme, is sort of the Romanov version of aristocrats in their society versus the British. And this is why the British, much longer, including, the House of Lords has changed, I know, but still there is a House of Lords that still now is more appointed for lifetime, but still has political power, where I don't know of another single aristocratic house, even how much it's changed, still would exist in any other country, kind of thing. So, Dukes, Lords, Earls, that would be a good name. Now, where's the roses start again? Yeah. So you sort of have this clique of people, and I could see, the Russian system there is messed up. It ain't good. Yeah, it's not a good one. Okay, where are my mounted troops? My mounted troops are here. Let's see if we go on the offensive there, if that's any good. No, you stay. You are wanting to attack there. Let's just quickly rush out to the open here. And I'll rush back to safety. I don't want to get cut off, but I want to change what the AI is doing. You counterattack there, you attack there. Force rotation. Yeah, let's spin that to push that through fast. But still things are not. Okay, yeah, no, Republic and Spain were, you know, oh, they allowed a landing to happen or something back here. Okay, attack. Okay, well, you secured that, good. Okay, good. Anti-fascist diplomacy. Show trials will be. Let's destroy our armed forces. The fifth column. The persecution of enemies of the people, those who would reverse or subvert the revolution, has been ongoing. Since the party came to power, the internal power struggles that followed have shifted our focus, and the purging of the party ranks themselves have been given more emphasis since Trotsky's exile. Stalin has made himself an icon, but at the cost of making many real enemies and innumerable imaginary ones. Having seen the worst of the internal power struggles, General Secretary is prone to act on the slightest suspicion. Being purged from the party means imprisonment or death. Dark times lie ahead for those who show disloyalty or just a bit too much loyalty to seem credible. Okay, without Googling, another challenge. Where does the term fifth column come from? There is a specific starting point to the term fifth column. Cue my theories about 1, why Afghanistan could have been set up as a monarchy, 2, why modern celebrities should never marry into royalty, 3, why American foreign policy is hindered by their irrational phobia of monarchies and aristocracies, or a general reminder of modern celebrities that, with a few exceptions, make real shitty aristocrats, as they have neither the skill nor the money. Yeah, the aristocrat really, I mean, they used to think of it as genetic, but it's really more of an education thing. Just no Google. Just where does fifth column come from? You guys should know this stuff. Senates only function effectively as an authoritarian state. Well, it's never functioned effectively as a state, AZs. And the monarchy there has rarely had too much influence outside of Greater Kabul. I mean, come on, guys, you study World War II a lot. You should know this. This should just be popping into people's heads. Fifth column. My God, am I just that freaking old that you guys just haven't been educated? So I know I heard this in school. Something. KIKB's getting it, and if you're not Googling, you're doing it. You're winning the class. Okay. It is, and this is what I thought this was going to be an event about when I read the fifth column, Spain, and not just because we're looking at Spain, but that there were 4 columns advancing on Madrid, nationalist columns. And at one time or something, and then it sort of became a meme before they knew what memes were. Boy, keep doing this. Franco was asked, well, which of your columns is going to take Madrid? Which is your columns going to take Madrid? Now, there were 4 columns advancing on Madrid. And of course, boy, I know I just said his name. Franco does not want to say which column he thinks is going to take Madrid because obviously you tell the reporters that, it'll get reported in papers, and the Republicans will know which column to try to block, you know. So he very cleverly says, the 5th column. What column? The 5th column. The one that's inside Madrid. They're going to rise up, all of our supporters inside Madrid, which, you know, is ruled by various committees of whatever. And so he does this as partially as a, you know, just give an answer to the reporters, but also to sow doubt about, you know, who's really a Republican and who's really a nationalist, and the nationalists are really organizing. So we've got to purge people that are disloyal and to cause strife within Madrid, as if there was a 5th column. That's where 5th columnist comes from. That you see if you watch Casablanca. It talks about that in the movie Casablanca. But I mean, they don't talk about this and that, but talk about 5th columnist. You see that used in a lot of various World War II movies whenever they're talking about, well, whether it's in Europe or America, 5th columnist. And it's like Quisling's, a Quisling comes out of, named after Quisling betraying in Norway. 5th column comes from Franco and talking to reporters. Hey, Gamer, that's why I enjoy your channel. History things, man. Sure. I didn't Google. No, I believe you. And so, you were around in the Garden of Eden. Nah, not quite. And so, yeah, that is sort of the column that will take and it was, there were definitely nationalist supporters in Madrid, but it was not really, at least to the best of my knowledge, and I'm not an expert on Spain and the Spanish Civil War, but to the best of my knowledge, it really wasn't a large movement that was well organized, getting ready to rise up in the city to take it over. It was more of like people with those sentiments were keeping their heads down and trying not to be attacked by the Stalinist secret police that were running around, whatever they were called. But there were definitely those types that were supported by Stalinists, purging various faction leaders in Spain. Okay, well, we're being pushed here. Our tanks have pushed into there, so you come back this way. Okay, we pushed to there. Good. Where's our other infantry division? No. Got one here. Oh, it's here too. Okay. Okay. Armor, you go. Armor, you go. Russian. Now. Attack here, and you support them. Yeah, I can do this military strategy stuff reasonably well, but unfortunately The AI isn't helping out much here. Okay. Overrun them, overrun them. Trying to cut this one division off here. See if we can kill it. Who knows, maybe we'll turn this around by 1939. I guess just keep building factories for production. Kilroy was here. That's definitely a bit of a meme. Endless Spain, maybe. We're just following Uncle Joe's orders and trying to stop the reactionaries. Well, okay, what are we doing? Okay, we need light tanks. We're burning up a lot of light tanks either. Well, no, we're not giving any lend-lease, but in battle. Okay. So let's run a couple of more. Support that attack. Where's our mountain division? Where is he? I don't want to keep him active. Okay, you can come to here. Let's see if we can spend some of these command points here. Do that. And, well, let's see, do any of our other generals? We spend some of that. Okay, there we go. Oh, we finally have shipyards free, and we're going to come over here and there we are. Let's get a few convoys going. For a Twitch chat, it would be nice to have a Kilroy emoji. Well, okay, yes, there are, I do know I can do some things like that. I've gotten big enough group, or maybe for YouTube. I don't know, Kilroy might be a good thing. Yes, that would be. Kilroy is love, Kilroy is life. Okay, the big T-35 tanks, which really do suck, but that's more just a stepping stone for later development of the KV-1s. Oh, pause. Okay, well now that we're in 38, let's come over here and do computing machines, which I would quite honestly probably bar the Soviets from in my knowledge of it, but not that much. Okay, I want to thank you all for watching. Thanks for liking the videos, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I'd really love to have you around more often, and please comment on things, what we've been talking about, gameplay, tips. I have not played the Soviets before, so you got some good suggestions. Please post them below. Thanks so much.